What's up, everybody? Louis back here again, breaking down UFC 269 pay-per-view, last pay-per-view of the year. Quick recap: UFC Vegas 44. I did all right. I went at 5-3. One of the fights fell off, so it is what it is. Couple upsets, like I figured. Biggest upset of the night, of course, Jose Aldo beating Rob Font. Rob Font definitely had his moments, but basically, Jose kind of dominated that fight, man. Won every round, so gotta give it up to him. Rob Font hurt him, took him down in the first round. Thought Rob Font was gonna breeze right past him, and he didn't. And Jose Aldo is amazing, and that's that. He was a pretty big, not a big underdog, but one of the more surprising ones. I think plus 130, plus 140. And then Fiziev, I got that one right. What a great fight. Fiziev with that wheel kick. Riddell's tough dude, so that's so impressive. Looked a lot better from his last fight against Bobby Green. Jimmy Crute, Jamal Hill. That's where I got that one wrong, man. Jamal Hill is a monster on the feet, and he's tricky, and he picks his shots. And, Jimmy Crute, tough dude, but it is what it is. He'll bounce back. He'll be better. And then Clay Guida and Leonardo Santos, I picked Clay Guida, but I didn't think it was getting up like that. I think they should have stopped it, to be honest, and they didn't, and I'm glad they didn't. And Clay Guida's a monster. Getting a submission victory over six-time submission champion or something like that. He was really good grappler. So that was awesome to see that. Clay Guida, 40 years old, and then Moreno kind of just stuck it to Mickey Gall. So that was a tough one to pick for me. And then Chris Curtis, the biggest underdog on the card, I had that one right. I thought the line was a mismatch. He was like plus 2 something, and he's powerful, and he just beat up Phil Hawes. And Phil Hawes is a monster, and, just knocked him out with one shot, basically. And same with Brendan Allen. And Brendan Allen just wanted to strike, didn't really want to use his wrestling, so that's what happens. And, pretty easy one to call, in my opinion. And then, Duskar Todorovic taking out Maki Pitolo. Maki Pitolo just choked right there, in my opinion, which sucks because he's very talented, has a lot of power. He looked really good against Marquez, but this fight, man, just kind of let Todorovic, let him put him where he wanted to. And, it just sucks because, I didn't think Todorovic was that good, but, he is. And, we lost the underdog spot there, but it is what it is. Coconut Bombs will be back. And then Minnow Kopp getting it done over Zumagulov. Pretty big favorite there. I was about to go against him. I'm glad. I think he's coming into his own, and he looks really good. He starts coming forward and starts being aggressive. He's picks his spots and throws his power shots. He's gonna be really good in this division. But anyway, UFC 269. You got Dustin Poirier taking on Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title, and I think this is unfinished business. And in my opinion, this is definitely going to be the true champion. So very important fight. Very excited to see that. And then Amanda Nunez defending her title against Julianna Pena. And there's a bunch of good fights on this card. Stacked top to bottom, even on the prelim, even the early prelims look really good. But real quick, you got Augusto Sakai taking on Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasa, a rising star. Augusto Sakai desperately needs a win here. And then you got the return of Josh Emmett taking on Dan Ige. Dan Ige, tough fighter, had a big win over Gavin Tucker, but has had bad luck with Korean Zombie, got outclassed there, in my opinion. Then Josh Emmett, had that amazing fight with Shane Burgos, dropped him twice. And, he's coming back off leg surgery, I forget what kind, but, he's been off for a little over a year. And then you got Dominic Cruz taking on Pedro Munoz, and, it's do or die for either guy, in my opinion. So that should be a fun fight. Definitely a winnable fight for either guy. It's what makes it exciting. And then you got Sean O'Malley taking on Raulian Paiva. Supposedly his toughest test to date, besides Chito Vera, I would assume. But, Sean O'Malley wins this, he's going to have to fight a ranked guy after this because Paiva kind of isn't ranked, whatever. But should be a good one. And then Cody Garbrandt making his flyweight debut against Kai France. Should be interesting. Still got to see tomorrow how the weight cut goes and everything. But should be fun. A lot of good cards, a lot of interesting matchups. Kind of a hard card to predict because you got people changing weight classes and you got championship fights, and those are always crazy. And then, and Paiva, he fought at 125 before. So just a very interesting card. But let's get right into it here. The first fight on the prelims, not the early prelims, regular prelims, at 185, you got Jordan Wright taking on Bruno Silva. Jordan Wright, his last fight, he took on Jamie Pickett, Jordan Beverly Hills Ninja Wright. In the first round, I noticed he keeps his distance and he slides distance, and he slides in and out. Keeps a wide stance, kind of like karate stance. And then he throws a counter straight right as Pickett is throwing his jab. And then he lands a short right as Pickett rushes forward. And then he's able to get the plum tie whenever he gets clinched to the fence. And then he's able to drop him with some elbows. And then with that he's defending the double and just hits him with the elbows, which I think is really smart. I don't know why more guys don't do that. But then, yeah, he's able to keep the overhook, and Pickett tries to take him down. And then he lands some ground and pound. And then he lands some tie knees to the head and just knocks him the fuck out and looked really good. And then he took on Joaquin Buckley the fight before that. And in the first round, he's going in and he's looking for the clinch. And he stands on the outside and he throws a 1-2. But then he gets clinched as he's backing up by Buckley. But then he lands a counter straight right that he uses. And then he uses the plum tie to get back whenever... To get Buckley around Buckley's back whenever Buckley gets on the inside of him. But then he's able to throw a knee from the outside. But then he gets clinched. And then he lands a head kick at range on Buckley, which is nice. But then he's moving in and out. But Buckley's able to get in. Try to keep him at range. But Buckley's able to get inside with the right hook. And then he backs him up with throwing straight shots. I'm sorry. Buckley's backing him up and Wright's throwing straight shots. But then he gets cut off the cage by Buckley. And then he gets dropped with hooks, and then, went out in second round. Shouldn't have went out and just got knocked out again. Buckley just mauled him, but, he did look pretty good there, going inside and outside. He just got cut off, and, he can only bounce around for so long like that. And Bruno Silva took on Andrew Sanchez his last fight. In the first round, he stalks forward, and he lands a flurry of straight shots. But then he lands some hooks to the body. And then he closes the distance with the lunge jab. But then he gets taken down with a single as he's throwing his 1-2. But he gets clinched to the fence with a body lock. But he's able to keep the overhook and keep some defense. And then in the second round, he chases him with the 1-2. But then he gets armed passed by. And then he gets mat returned. Andrew Sanchez picks him up and lifts him. Then he lands some vicious elbows from the bottom. Really active on the bottom, which is always nice to see. And he gives his back, but he's able to work up to his feet and then quad pod, and he's able to get out. And then third round, Sanchez looks noticeably tired. And then he's able to stalk forward, duck the jabs, and then he throws the hooks, but he's a little too far away. But then he lands a jab and then a right hook to the body against the fence. Then he hits him with the 1-2. He's able to close the distance now on Sanchez. But then he eats uppercut at range, but then he swings wild with the 1-2, and then he gets the flurry up against the fence and just gets the TKO and just kind of goes after him and beats him. And Silva looked really good on, he was getting beat on the ground, but he wasn't taking too much damage, and he was able to get up eventually and just kind of ride it out. So, and Silva has a lot of power, and Jordan Wright has power too, but Bruno Silva, forward moving, and when you pressure him, that's when Jordan Wright has problems, in my opinion. Bruno Silva, minus 365, Jordan Wright plus 280. Hate the price tag, but it is what it is. Jordan Wright's not going to beat this guy. I'm sorry, he might, but I doubt it. Bruno Silva's too powerful. He's going to be in his face. That's where Jordan Wright, he's going to cut him off, won't be able to move around. My pick here is Bruno Silva. All right, second fight on the prelims. We got a heavyweight banger here. You got Augusto Sakai taking on Tai Tuivasa. Sakai desperately needs a win. Tuivasa looking to make the next step up. Big spot for both guys here. Sakai took on Georgina Rosenstrike his last fight. Not much to the fight. He stayed on the outside through feints, comes in towards him, lands leg kicks, but then he backs out and he gets pushed back with some straight shots, and then he gets cut off and pressed toward the cage. But then he eats a jab as he's coming in, and then he eats it straight to the body and straight to the head on the cage, but then he circles out. But then toward the end of the fight, like 10 seconds left to go in the round, he circles to the right, Jorginho's power on the cage, but then he eats, Jorginho dabs him to the body a couple times, then throws a left hook, and then a right hook to the head and knocks him the fuck out. And that was that, and Sakai just looked timid and didn't want any part of him. He's a power puncher, and Tai Tuivasa, maybe not as powerful as Rosenstrike, but definitely bangs. So, but Tuivasa took on Greg Hardy's last fight, and this was a banger. First round comes in and lands leg kicks, but then he eats some straight shots, but he's able to circle out once he's getting hit. Then he stands at range and eats a straight right, but he lands a counter right hook, and then he fires a straight right, but then he gets rocked with a counter, and then he slips, and he slips the left hand to Hardy, and then he lands a left hook when Hardy rushes him because he gets rocked a little bit, and then knocks Hardy the fuck out because Hardy's dumb as fuck. But still a good shot. Still showed some composure getting rocked there. Both guys minus 110. Tough one. I don't know, man. Tai Tuivasa, flip a coin. I like him. He's on a streak. He's a power, he's going to get in there and bang. Sakai might be too tentative. It is what it is, dude. It's even. Whatever. Then the coming event of the prelims, you got a banger at bantamweight. You got Pedro Munoz taking on Dominic Cruz. Do or die, in my opinion, either guy. Pedro Munoz on a losing, well, not a losing streak, but just lost to Aldo. Dominic Cruz, it's his last shot here of his last ride. So Munoz took on Jose Aldo his last fight. This loss looks a lot better now. In the first round, he closes the distance with a double jab and then a hook. And then he pumps the leg kicks, but he gets countered to the body by Aldo. Then he stalks forward, lands a 1-2. But then he eats a knee and then a straight right. And then Aldo's able to clinch. But then he eats a left hook at range, and then he's able to close the distance with the right hook, but then he eats uppercut at range, and this was the problem, just having trouble closing the distance, and Aldo was pressuring him and just all over him, and, Munoz was just a little too slow, basically. Then in the second round, he gets picked apart at range, but then he throws hooks, but he's not able to land, and he feints a kick, and then he lands a right cross at range, and then he circles out, and that was the thing. He landed a couple shots on Aldo, but never really followed up with it. And then he eats a jab at range, and while he's looking to get in. And in the third round, he eats a jab and a combo at range. And then he's trying to clinch. He's not able to get it. And then he's pressing in the pocket, and he looks for a hook. But he gets a jab back, and he eats a 4-punch combination from Jose. And then he eats leg kicks, but he's able to land a straight right. But then Aldo is able to circle out as soon as he hits him. Again, like I said, never follows up. Then he feints a hook, but he eats a barrage of punches at range at the end. And, Aldo's just, landed way more strikes than him and just beat him to the punch, literally. And then Dominic Cruz took on Casey Kenny's last fight, pretty good fight. In the first round, he shoots a double leg immediately, but he gets stuffed, but still putting it in his mind, which is always good, and veteran move. And then he lands a head kick at range, and then at range, he throws, his weird dip overhand right, because he's Dominic Cruz, just throws like that or whatever, I don't know. And then he lands hands are at his hips, and he throws and lands a right hand from there when they're inside the pocket together. And then he eats leg kicks whenever he's trying to enter on Kenny, though. And then in the second round, he shoots an ankle pick as Casey enters, but then he lands a front kick, but he eats a 1-2, and then he dips right to the body and then a left to the head. And then he gets pressed, but he eats inside low kick, and that was the thing Kenny was having success with in this fight. And then he eats a body kick, but then he lands a dip left hand, and then he blitzes forward and lands a lot there. And then he starts stalking with his right hands, and then but he eats a counter left. Starts just landing a couple right hands, but then he eats a counter left from Kenny. And then in the third round, he shoots, but then he comes up, doesn't get it, comes up and lands a left, and then he gets the double to the single takedown against the fence. He gets put in a guillotine, but he jumps right to side control, no problems there. And he stalks forward, and he lands a straight right, but then he swings the left hook, and as he's backing up, but he eats some straight shots. Then he gets the clinch, and he lands some wild hooks, and he presses forward, and then he's able to make Casey Kenny miss with hooks as he comes forward. And then he's able to get the knee tap takedown from space right at the end there, and just kind of standing at range and making Kenny miss and expending energy. Dominic Cruz plus 100, Pedro Munoz minus 120. How I see it, Cruz is going to pressure Munoz. Not like Aldo, they're very different, but I think Cruz will pressure him, hit on the outside, hit him, and then circle out, back away, not being able to hit him. And Munoz might land a couple big shots, but that's about it. Cruz might sneak a takedown in there, but the threat's going to be there at least. He's even money. My pick here is Dominic Cruz. Okay, main event of the prelims. You had a banger at men's featherweight. You got Josh Emmett taking on Dane Ige. Josh Emmett been off for almost a year and a half now. So I forget, some sort of knee surgery, I believe. And then Dane Ige, coming off the loss to Korean Zombie. Decent count himself, just isn't at that level yet. Josh Emmett, he took on Shane Burgos his last fight. That was June of 2020. And the first round, he cracks him with a straight right as he's getting pressed. And then he pumps his jab and a right hook from range. And then he lands an overhand right to left hook, and then he backs to the fence and he looks to counter with hooks, but then he pumps a jab, and as he backs up, and he lands a count. He's able to counter with the hard right hook, and then he eats some calf kicks on the entry. However, Shane Burgos was having some success with those. Then he eats a hook to the body, and then some jabs when they're standing in the pocket, because Burgos is a banger. But then he eats jabs at range, and then he shoots a single leg. Doesn't get it, but. And then, or might get, it was the end of the round, didn't really matter. And then the second round, he lands a 1-2, and then a straight right, counter, off life change, straight right. And then he's able to stick and move with right hooks, which is really good. As soon as he was getting hit, just go in and out. And then he eats inside leg kicks after throwing some counters, but he pumps jabs at range, and then his jab is slipped, and he eats a body hook from Burgos. Then he's able to land a right hook in the pocket. And then in the third round, he counters the front kick with a straight right, and then he's able to drop him with a switch stance, straight right, switch stance, boom, all the power goes into it. And then he rips to the body, and then lands another straight right, and then he's able to land a switch stance, short overhand left, and then he drops him again. and then he eats, but then they get back on the feet, doesn't really pursue him on the ground. He get back on the feet, eats a couple jabs at range, then he lands a counter right hook in the firefight, and then, close decision, tough fight, but he was in control. He was landing the bigger shots, in my opinion. Burgos had his moments, but, it was all Emmett. Dane Ige took on Korean Zombie his last fight. In the first round, he stays at range, and he closes the distance with hooks, but then he lands a lead left hook, and he slides with the jab, and then he lands a lead uppercut on Korean Zombie, but then he eats some hooks, and he covers up, and then he gets taken down, just kind of standing at range there, not defending, and then he eats a counter right off of his jab, but then he enters with the uppercut from range, and then in the second round, he presses with the jab, and he throws the left hook, then he eats some hooks and a jab as he's stalking forward, but then he's able to pull him into some hooks, and that's where he had his success, getting Korean Zombie to move toward him and slip in whenever Korean stepped in, and he would hit and move, and that's where he was having his success at. But then he eats a right over his jab, and then his double attempt is stuffed, but then he's able to get a clinch on the fence, but then he lands a straight to the body, and then he gets the clinch, but he attempts the Kimura. He gets clinched, and then he attempts the Kimura, but then he gets his back taken by Korean Zombie, which was kind of dumb in my opinion. So, and in the third round, more the same, but he gets taken down as he's coming in, and he tries to get a reversal, and then he tries to reshoot on him while he's already on the mat, and he grabs his leg, but then he gets his back taken, he gets put in rear naked choke position again with the hook. Korean Zombie put the hooks in, and he had it. He didn't get it sunk in, obviously, but he's closed a couple times, and that was just bad ring IQ in my opinion. Just kind of giving up his back there, to be honest. Dane Ige plus 135, Josh Emmett minus 155. I don't like that Josh Emmett was off for so long, and the price is okay. And Dane Ige is a good fighter, but I just think Josh Emmett is going to be hitting him more. And then the only intangible we know is how long he's been off. You just got to kind of hope that he's going to be okay and trust that he's going to, be okay, and it's not going to affect him. It's only a 3-round fight, so that that's a positive. And I like Josh Emmett here. I think he's going to land the harder shots, and I think he's going to have trouble getting to him. My pick here is Josh Emmett. All right, the first fight on the main card. We got a banger to kick things off. Bantamweight 135, you got Sugar Sean O'Malley taking on Raleigh and Paiva. Sean O'Malley took on Chris Matinho his last fight. In the first round, lands a front kick to the jab, and then he circles and he pumps his jab, and he circles out of the hooks where Matinho's throwing. Then he lands a head kick and he pumps a jab, and he backs up, but he gets hit with the right, and he circles out. Every time Matinho hit him, he would circle out. They didn't hit him much, though. But then he ducks under the hook, and he lands an uppercut on Matinho, and then a combination in the pocket. But then he lands his right hand whenever Chris stalks forward, and then he's able to land a knee. And then he drops Oma with the step back jab. He's coming into him. Then the second round, more the same. Touches him a lot, but he lands a head kick as Chris stalks forward, and then he's grabbing his wrist and landing the straight right, which I really liked, different. And then he circles off the cage and fires a 1-2. Then he digs at the body toward the end of the round. Then he lands knees with his back against the cage. And then in the third round, pumps a jab, backs up, circles away, lands a head kick, and he ducks under the hook of Matinho, and he steps through, just kind of gets to the other side of him. And then he lands a double jab, and then a knee, and then a combination, and then a big right hurts him. Then he eats a right hook off of his jab, but that's gonna happen when you're in a firefight. And then he lands a flurry, then he ducks under the uppercut, and just flurries and just gets a TKO. Refs saw enough. Good performance, but wasn't able to get him out of there, but still did all he could do. And then Raleigh and Paiva took on Kyler Phillips his last fight. In the first round, he lands a counter hook off of the jab. Then he eats a head kick and then a 1-2. But then he gets dropped. Then he lands a blitz with some wild hooks. And then he catches a kick and he's able to get around Kyler's back. But the back on the doesn't do anything major. And then he eats a short right hook on with the double against the fence from Kyler. And then he gets on top of Kyler. But then he gets on top as Kyler falls with the spinning wheel kick, but then he gets reversed and he eats some elbows. Then he gets hurt with the lead elbow, and then with the straight right, and he gets dropped with the right elbow, and then eats ground and pound at the end of the first round. Then second and third, you could tell Kyler was noticeably more tired. Then in the second round, he's able to duck the hook and he gets around the back, but he can't get the takedown. and then he's at range and he slides and he lands elbows, but he hurts him with the straight right, and then he lands hooks on the inside, and then he gets the clinch and he's able to land a right hook, but then he gets taken down at space, just kind of standing there for a second, he gets taken down from open space, but then he presses to the fence and lands some jabs, and then he gets his back take, he throws his hook, and Kyler ducks off and gets his back taken standing. Then he eats a right cross as he's stalking forward, but then he lands his own right cross. Then in the third round, he eats a right cross from range. He's able to stop the takedown though, and then he lands a straight right. He pushes forward and then lands a 1-2, and then he's able to land an elbow on Kyler against the cage. Then he eats a straight right, but he's able to counter with some hooks, and then he stalks, gets in the inside and lands hooks, but then he gets taken down from open space again. Whenever there's a pause in the action, Kyler would get that takedown. Then toward the end, he's able to reverse the clinch, and then he's able to get a double leg real quick at the end of the fight. Riley and Paiva plus 250, Sean O'Malley minus 320. I know what everybody's thinking. I hate the price, and I've been burned on O'Malley before, and I faded him the last couple times, and you know, he turns out to be the real deal for who he's fighting anyway. And you know, he did his job every time. He might not have got the knockout like we wanted, but you know, he got it done, no questions asked. And then you know, Paiva had his moments, but he really did get beat. You know, he got really hurt the first round, and Kyler was out of shape in my opinion. And it was a close fight. You could argue Kyler even won that fight, or it should have been a draw, I guess. Not that he won it. It should have been a draw. Strong argument. Probably sucks. It's just one of those things. You got to eat it. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. Everybody's going to be wrong. My pick here is Sugar Sean O'Malley. All right. Second fight on the main card. You got a very interesting banger here at flyweight 125. You got Kai Kara-France taking on Cody Garbrandt in his flyweight debut. Obviously, 135-pounder, moving down for the first time. Kara-France took on Rogerio Bontorin in his last fight. And, you know, this was pretty action-packed. In the first round, he bounces on the outside, and then he feints and pumps a jab. Then he closes distance with the right hook. He's able to get inside. Then he feints and lands a jab, but he eats a right hook. But then he gets cut off at the cage, and then he eats some straight shots from Bontorin, and then he gets doubled, and then he gets his back taken in a rear naked choke position. But then finally, he's able to stand up and slide him off, push his legs to the correct side and get out. And whenever he was in the backpack, and then he's able to land an overhand right, and then counters Bontorin's jab, and then toward the end he lands a check right and drops him in controversy, but basically gets the knockout. Ref called it off, whatever. He hurt him really bad and got it. So you know, fought through some adversity. You know, it's hard to get somebody off your back, and he was able to do that. So he looked pretty good. He was losing the whole fight, but you know, came back and got it done. And then Cody Garbrandt took on Rob Font in his last fight at bantamweight. In the first round, he's at range, and he lands a leg kick, and then he backs out. And then he lands a jab at range, and he's in and out. But then he eats a 1-2 on his entry. But then he lands a straight right, and then a left uppercut. But he gets back to the fence. But he's able to get the double leg whenever Font's pushing towards him, which I really liked. And then, he eats a hard 1-2. He couldn't keep him down for too long, but he eats a hard 1-2 on the fence. But then he circles toward the fence, but he eats some shots. But then he's able to get the double leg again to end the fight, end the round. And then the second round, he's able to get the double leg immediately. But then Rob Font gets the Kimura and just uses it to go through and sweep. And then you could so he can get on his feet. You could tell, you know, Garbrandt's a little tired after that. But then he backs up and fires a 1-2, but it's too short, not hitting Rob Font. But then he eats jabs and he's backing up. But then he shoots to the fence. But then he eats some jabs as he misses his hooks. And then he eats elbow in the clinch. Rob Font started doing that, which is nice. Rob Font would start going into him. Then in the third round, he gets pressed with jabs and he backs out of range. Then he catches Rob's kick and lands a 1-2. And then he lands a right hook off of Rob's jab. But then he gets tagged back by Rob. Couldn't get out of there fast enough. Then he eats a jab, and then he misses the overhand, and then he eats an uppercut. But then his clinch gets reversed on the fence, and then he gives his back standing. And then he gets backed up with jabs, and then he eats it right to the body. But then he lands a counter hook off of Rob's jab. And then, you know, 4 and 5, more the same, but it's only a 3-round fight, so... And then, you know, Garbrandt, minus 135, Kai Kara-France, plus 115. Now, obviously, big intangible here. How's Cody going to look at 125? Is his chin going to get worse? Yeah. But you know what? It's a 3-round fight, which is good for him. It's his first time there, but, you know, it is what it is. And I think he can do it. He's not the biggest bantamweight in the world. And just looking at the matchup, without thinking about the weight cut or anything, the line's not close enough, I don't think, to take that into account. I'm just trying to look at the fight objectively without any of that. I think Garbrandt, he'll be able to get a takedown on him. I think he'll be able to land his hooks, get in and out. Kara-France isn't the hardest hitter. I know he dropped Bontorin, but He's not necessarily a power puncher. I think Garbrandt will be good. I think he'll still be fast. He'll be stronger and bigger. And if he gets him down, I think he might be able to hold him down there. Close call. Might come back to bite me, but minus 135. My pick here is Cody Garbrandt. All right, the feature fight on the main card. You got at 170, you got Jeff Neal taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Big spot for both guys. Jeff Neal really needs a win. Ponzinibbio trying to climb his way back after his Li Jingliang loss. Had a good fight against Baeza, so a lot at stake for both guys here. Jeff Neal took on Neil Magny his last fight. In the first round, he stalks forward and pumps his jab. Then he gets it clinched to the fence almost immediately. Then he lands a combination on the fence. Then he lands a hard left, but he eats a 1-2 and then a head kick at range. And then he gets blitzed, kind of get put in the plum by Magny. And then but then he's able to get the body lock to the fence. But Magny has the plum, and he's kind of doing work on the inside. It's kind of sneaky. But then he gets his back taken whenever Magny level changes. Just kind of ducks under in the clinch and gets his back. Then in the second round, he eats some straight shots. He's stalking forward, and then he eats straight shots when he's on the inside of Magny. And then he feints a right, and he gets the clinch, and then he's able to get the trip. But then to get back on the feet, and he's able to stuff the double leg. But Magny gets a 2-on-1, gets two hands on his arm, and he's able to get up. And then he blitzes forward, but he gets clinched to the fence again, and then he gets his back taken off of a single leg. And then he eats jabs at range. Magny just really wrapped him up every time he could, and Magny would come forward with such force, and Magny just kind of uses his momentum against him there. And then in the third round, he stalks, but he eats a jab and then a front kick to the body. But then he has trouble getting in on Magny now. Magny's really keeping himself long, pumping his jab. But then he cuts him off the cage and fires a 1-2. But Magny is able to clinch, and he puts him in the plum. And then Neal just kind of retreats out of there. And then he gets overextended throwing a shot. And then he stuffs a double leg, but then he gets tripped to the mat from Magny. Magny just faking the double and getting the body lock trip. And then basically, Jeff comes in real aggressive and wants to land those big power shots, but then Magny was just kind of wrapping him up every time. So, but Jeff definitely cracked him a couple times, so it was a pretty good fight. And then Santiago Ponzinibbio took on Miguel Baeza his last fight. In the first round, he eats leg kicks and closes his distance with the 1-2, and he starts circling back, but he eats a 1-2, and then he presses with the 1-2, and then he eats a head kick, and then another 1-2. But then he starts getting inside, but then he gets wobbled with the leg kick, but he pushes forward with the blitz. And then in the second round, he lands jabs at range, and he presses forward, but then he eats a couple teeps, but then he gets rocked with the overhand right, but he starts pressing through his kicks, and then he lands some shots, and that's where he had success, just kind of going toward the kicks, taking a couple of the kicks, and just getting on the inside and landing short punches. And then he presses forward with the jabs, and then he counters with the overhand right, and then he presses with jabs and some hooks, and kind of started to take over there by the end of the second round. Then in the third round, he lands a heavy leg kick from range, and then he lands hooks, but then he eats some counter jabs off of him. But then he presses forward with his jabs and straight right, and then he just pours it on him the last 2 minutes and just gets in his face, combination, straight shots, under uppercuts. But then he eats a couple counter uppercuts from him, but it was more about activity, and he got it done second half of the fight. It was a very good competitive fight, and he just needed to go through the leg kicks to go on the inside. Ponzinibbio minus 130, Jeff Neal plus 110. Close one. I'm not going to take into account Jeff Neal's arrest or anything. I'm not going to worry about that. I think Jeff Neal's going to press him, and I think he's going to hurt Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio might be able to land a couple counter shots, might be able to clinch him a little bit, but Jeff Neal hits hard and he's aggressive, and his cardio mostly holds up. And close fight, coin flip in my opinion. And then Ponzinibbio got knocked out by Li Jingliang not too long ago. My pick here is Jeff Neal. All right, co-main event, women's bantamweight 135. You got Amanda Nunez, the GOAT, the Lioness, taking on Julianna Pena. Amanda Nunez took on Felicia Spencer her last fight. At bantamweight, excuse me. She fought at 145 last fight. And that's an intangible that I don't really care about. She'll be fine. She's been 135 before. I think people are making too big a deal of it. In the first round, she stalks at range, and then she pumps her jab. Then she lands a 1-2, and then she comes in, lands a 1-2, backs out, and then she lands a short right as Felicia presses forward. But then her kick is caught, but then she's able to get a wizard kick takedown in the clinch, and then just get the half guard and just sit there. Doesn't do too much ground and pound, lands some. Just rides out the round. Second round, she lands a counter right as Felicia is coming in to throw, and then she slides in, lands a jab, and then a right cross, and then she's able to stuff the double leg, and then she's able to get the single leg takedown, and then just again right out the round. Too much to report there. And then in the third round, she lands a 1-2 and then backs out, and then she lands a right over Felicia's jab, and then she's able to stuff the double leg again, and then she catches the kick and does a foot sweep, kicks her leg out, gets her on her back, just lets her up, and then she dips right and then to the body and lands a 1-2 and then a head kick, and then she lands a 1-2, but then she gets clipped with the left, but it doesn't really matter. Fourth, fifth round, more the same. She just stays patient, stays at range, stays sharp, picks her shots, gets to take down what she can. Yeah, it's Amanda Nunez. And then Julianna Pena, she took on Sarah McMahon her last fight. And the first round, she stays at range, and she stalks forward and then eats some right hooks, but then she backs out, but then she eats a straight right, and then she lands a right hook counter off of McMahon's jab, and then she gets taken down with a single leg as she's pressing forward, but then she gives her back up and gets in the rear naked choke position, but she's able to break the lock, and then she's able to get up, but she gets taken down with a single, and she pulls the guillotine, which is dumb because she doesn't get it, so she looked pretty bad in the first round, if you ask me. Then in the second round, she lands a left hook, and then she gets taken down with the single as she's loading up her right hand, and then she tries the guillotine, but it doesn't work. Again, stupid, not going to work. And then her back is taken, but then she's getting up, and she shakes her off, and then she tries the guillotine when they're on their knees, but can't get it. But then she gets clinched to the fence, but then she lands some short hooks on the break and gets out of the clinch, and then, started walking her down, landed a couple hooks, and then that was the turning point of the fight there. McMahon started becoming more tentative because of the power of Pena. And in the third round, she presses with the jab and lands a counter 1-2, and then a straight right to the body, and then she's able to get the clinch, and then she gets a step through trip, and she's able to get into side control, and then she's able to get the back, and she works, gets her hooks in, takes her time, which I really liked. And then she lands some ground and pound throughout the whole time too, so she's scoring in front of the judges, doing damage the whole time, and then just keeps working, and eventually just gets the rear naked choke submission. And that was that, and I don't think she looked particularly impressive, if you ask me, but everybody thinks that this is Nunez's her hardest challenge to date, and I don't know if the data supports that. I'm sorry, but I think that she's just the next person up, and I just think that Amanda Nunez going back down to bantamweight, I just don't think that has anything that's not going to play a factor here. I don't think it's going to matter. You got Julianna Pena plus 650, Amanda Nunez minus 1,000. Obviously, it's ridiculous, but I'm going with Amanda Nunez here. But the one bet I really do like here is over 1.5 rounds minus 145. Amanda Nunez doesn't hunt for the finish. Julianna Pena might charge her, and that will cause a finish. But I think over 1.5 is a safe bet, so that's the bet to make. But anyway, Amanda Nunez. All right, the main event for the lightweight championship at 155 pounds, men's lightweight. You got Charles "Du Bronx" Oliveira taking on Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Now, this fight to me, I think that it's finally settling some unfinished business because Charles won it off at Chandler, but that was for the vacant title, and then Dustin fought Connor. And then whoever wins this fight is truly the lightweight champion, in my opinion. So I've been wanting to see this for a long time, and the division needs to find out who the champion is so it can move along, because you got a lot of things happening. You got Islam, and then Dariush is up there now. So Charles Oliveira took on Michael Chandler his last fight. Quick fight. In the first round, he stays at range, pumps a jab, eats some body shots, but then he gets tagged with left hooks, and then he's able to shoot the double and gets it, but he gets put in a guillotine by Chandler, kind of tight, not really. And then he's able to get to Chandler's back, and then he gets the figure four lock with his legs, and then has him in the rear naked choke position, but Michael Chandler gets a 2-on-1 on his arm, and then he's able to turn into him, explode, gets on top, and then Oliveira's able to push him off to get back to the feet, and then he just kind of bounces at range, but then he presses forward, but then he gets hurt with the left hook, and then he gets dropped with the overhand right from Chandler, and then Michael Chandler just jumps on top of him and just beats him up for the rest of the round, and he took a lot of damage, but he's able to just gut it out, man. They say Charles Oliveira quits all the time. Yeah, bullshit, dude. Michael Chandler hits like a truck, so that's all I gotta say about that. And then just, weather the storm. Second round, Michael Chandler comes out a little reckless, keeps his right hand down by his waist, and then Charles Oliveira lands a counter left hook, and then gets the TKO, and that's that. So, it was very quick. Looked kind of bad, but he was able to get his back at least, so you know, he did his thing. Just Michael Chandler's nuts. And then Dustin Poirier took on Conor McGregor, his last fight, for the second time. In the first round, he's at range and he pumps jabs. He eats a straight left and he circles away. But then he eats a kick and then a teep from Conor. But then he swings the hook. And then he lands a jab and a right cross. And he presses forward. And then he lands a straight left and he pumps his jab. And then he clinches. And then McGregor jumps on the guillotine. But he's able to get out of that, and he's on top of him now in full guard. McGregor kind of tight, not really. You know, Poirier, you know, he wasn't stressing out over it, so he just kept his composure, stayed there, and just went to work in full guard. And eventually, Conor gets back up to his feet with like short time left, 20 seconds, I think. And then, you know, he rolls over his ankle, unfortunately. And then you know, Poirier jumps on top of him and lands some more ground and pound. But Poirier was winning that fight. He was keeping his distance, and he was biding his time to come in, and he was eating some leg kicks, but whenever he had to, he would pressure and then just pressure Conor and get inside. And then, you know, his jab looked good as well. And then, you know, yeah, he's decent on the ground. He didn't get takedown this time, but, you know, if he gets on the ground, it's, you know, nasty ground and pound. So, but I don't know how it's going to go with Oliveira getting him on the ground, but Dustin Poirier minus 140, Charles Oliveira plus 120. Tough one, but Charles Oliveira is a champion. He's underdog money. You know, it's kind of simple right there. It's a coin flip, in my opinion. I got to go with Charles Oliveira because he's the underdog, and you know, I think who's going to be able to get Poirier to the ground. You know, Poirier, obviously it's Khabib. Khabib's Khabib, but you know, Khabib really worked him on the ground, and I don't think Charles Oliveira might not be able to take him down right away, but I think he'll be able to get something. He'll be able to luck something up. Maybe a tricky guillotine. Maybe Poirier gets confident, shoots. Who knows? But underdog money for Charles Oliveira. Everybody's discrediting him, so that's a sign, in my opinion. And then the other good bet on this fight is over 1.5 minus 185. Not the best odds, but I really don't see it going under that. You know, I know both their last fights just were only one round, but when these guys are together, I think they're going to wait it out, at least over a round and a half, in my opinion. But my visual pick here is Charles Oliveira. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Very excited for this pay-per-view. Finally get some closure at lightweight. Good to see Nunez back in action. And then Dominic Cruz making his return. It's a great pay-per-view all around. I did a little bit better last week. Won some. Winning record, not the best, but building myself back up. I appreciate all the support. I'll leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe, tell people. I want to win you guys some money. Hopefully, you know, if you're not got a losing record, you can still win money on certain fights if I pick them right. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all of that. I'll do a post-fight recap and just tweet out some information, talk about the fights with me there. Anyway, I appreciate the support. Going to be a great fight. We got one more till 2022. A lot of good fights for that year. Got Francis Ngannou take on Cyril Gane, start off the year, so very exciting. Let's get this money, baby.